I'm gonna keep running. So I just want to point out that like a lot of these videos I'm making, they're 10 minutes at a piece because the device I'm using will only record for 10 minutes on end, and so sometimes they might be a little bit staggered, or I'll start with the topic and then it might take me a couple videos to get back to that, where it almost a little bit seemed like I was going on about something, but I'm more so having an idea in my mind of some different thoughts that I'm bringing together, and it's a little bit of a creative act. Like sometimes you think about like doing something creative, like say you're making some music, like you're making some beats or something like that, and as much as you're intentionally making the beats, there's something about it that's coming together of itself for itself through you, where it's like these ideas are happening to you. Oh, and you know this little trick, and you can put this together, and now you can put something together. But on the one hand, I've said about like sound is that according to Arthur Avalon, anything that we say had already existed before we enunciated it on some level or another, whether intellectually or the potence to enunciate that song, that sound, like with our voice, the potential for our voice and the thought that would go with the potential in our enunciation existed prior to it being overt and enunciated. That would be the gross form according to Arthur Avalon. But it had been causal before that, the cause of that. Then it had been subtle, and sometimes like we're always thinking we can maybe think that our tongue is actually moving on a very, 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 very subtle level. So it's like, okay, so I'm talking out loud now, right? And you can hear me, and I mean to be heard. But then when I'm thinking to myself, so where does it go from thinking to yourself to enunciating yourself? And do you really turn that all the way on or off? It might just be that you more so keep it to yourself and it's subtle that whole time, but you can appreciate that you're still talking at time. So if you have people that are like passive aggressive, or like just like they're very quiet, taciturn means very like overly like uh uh pre- conspicuously quiet would be taciturn. But if you've known anyone who's taciturn, they're anything but quiet in their mind and in their heart when they get around the right audience, whether that's to say how horrible you are, or like they get around where they're comfortable and they got plenty to say. So according to Arthur Avalon, also a crane-like man, a crane-like person is the most dangerous of person. That's an analogy to having like a big beak, but also being quiet. And that's actually, we're all just cranes like that, which is that whether we're choosing to speak and be heard or not, we're more so conversing with ourselves, about ourselves, and about others always. And you can feel, you can more so, if you're subtle enough, you can appreciate that in other people, what they may be saying, or what they may be saying that is thinking, that is saying, that is thinking at all times. You can't entirely turn that off, and it's actually perceptible on different levels. If you've been around certain things, you can perceive certain things that are being said to a, when a person is saying certain things to themselves, you can perceive it. There's a girl that I worked with when I was a counselor at a summer camp in late high school. She was my same age, late high school, and she was really funny. She could control, she could she could exert leadership with humor, like very, very, very strong humor. But like she's from like the deep south, and like one of our coworkers was mad, and she's like, "Are you cussing at me in your head?" And that's exactly what he had been doing. So a lot of people are cussing at us in their head. Some people might be loving us in their head, but more people are cussing at us in their head. But it had been subtle before it got around to being verbal. But you may not be able to turn that on and off. And I was a little bit digressing with that, but some of this thing about being creative is that it's there to be. So whatever I maybe express on a guitar, it was already potent before I got around to plucking it, and it was already a potential. That's some of what like Plato and Aristotle were talking about. I think about like some things exist as a pure concept, the potence, the potential as a pure concept before they get around to being manifest. That might be true of a lot of what we have for existence. Is that it existed as a concept, and it has a deeper existence as a concept before it comes into manifestation. That might also be true of us. Whatever I am as a personality that makes me unique, that might be a potence as a concept before it gets around to being expressed, before the conditions and circumstance of life would conspire and antagonize and conspire to give me the potential opportunity to exist as myself. I may have been a potence that is a concept idea before that in my purest form, and that's why I think that the strongest the violence par excellence is to mock a person, to ridicule the idea of person. One of the strongest ways to do that would be to mock a person's voice and choices in speech and communication, because that's as personal as personal. And a lot of who you are you can't take who you are away from your voice. Your voice reflects all of your experiences and also the potential for your further experiences. Your choices in communication similarly, but the quality of your voice also. So sometimes you wouldn't appreciate people as being violent. So I was being trained by some actual state troopers today. I'm not training for law enforcement, but it was actually a transportation capacity where some of these people that are former state troopers are ostensibly the most versed and seasoned in this type of skill set. And these men were actually mocking me on the first day. A person I had actually paid, I had subsidized their employment by paying for training that they received compensation for, and in rendering that training that I had paid for as a client, they were mocking me in a group. And also, what you do as a part of a group is actually more potent because we're social beings, so we're actually socialized and inculcated to some of our real skill sets and things that work for us and against us. That's some of the power of like boot camp, is the fact that it's social like that. I think that had been King Noble that pointed that out, the YouTuber, not about boot camp, but just about that things that we do when we're socialized to do something is very powerful. So if you can be derogatory to a person in a social context as a social application beyond one-on-one is still social, but if you have an audience in a cohort and you mock a person like that, it's a deeper degree of violence and injury to self-esteem. And so these actual former state troopers were actually mocking me on the first day of training, and that's an example of how violent some people might be, even people we ostensibly trust, like these state troopers, these people that ostensibly keep us safe. Some of them are very violent enough to mock a young person trying to contract training with the assumption and also the faith that they would be seasoned, versed, and maybe kind or at least professional. And the men were mocking me. But what I wanted to say is that but a lot of what we're doing creatively, it had already been there as a potential, and we just came upon it, or we had. That's why I think some of the highest degree of both songwriting and song playing, that is artistry, to me is just taste, like taste in music, like an ear for music is what it actually is to be a songwriter. So I think we actually might have more artists and songwriters than we may know and they may know. It's just that we have a lot of people with taste, but they may not have gotten comfortable or versed with a means of expressing it, but the taste is there. That is, the artistry is there. You might say the same thing about intellectual things, is that, you know, some people say that an intellectual, like a writer or like a content creator, might be a little bit like conceited or like impressed with themselves, but it actually takes a little bit of the spirit of that to convey an idea and muse upon an idea and play with an idea and fathom an idea in order to render it. So actually being a little bit of like I'm not trying to say it's good to be into yourself, because arrogance and pride hurts people when it's negative. But I meant to say is that the things that some of that might actually be what actually lends itself to the creativity. And but I think I got some other noises going on, so I'm going to try to take this one somewhere else. I'm going to take my pretentious content creating self to a different vicinity where I can get a little privacy to get off some of these ideas.